Hi, this is Brad Oaster, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about my history and my background. As I work with churches all across the United States, I'm often asked by church leaders, building committee members, and other folks, how did you get into church development? How did you become the national church developer that you are? Well, it really wasn't anything that I had planned. I think it was all part of God's bigger picture for my life. When I grew up, I planned on being a pilot. Everything that I did was aimed at going to the United States Air Force Academy, flying military, and then being a commercial airline pilot. My dad was a pilot for Pan American. My mom was a flight attendant for United Airlines. And so everything that I did revolved around the airport and aviation. Well, when I graduated from high school, I went to the Air Force Academy, and they asked what I wanted to do. I said, I want to fly the meanest, fastest thing you got. And they said, how tall are you? Well, I'm 6'6.5". The cutoff for a fighter pilot or any pilot at the Air Force Academy is 6'3", no exceptions. So that killed my career in the Air Force. So I went to Pan Am, sat in the cockpit of a 747, and I couldn't get my knees under the panel because I got these long legs that wouldn't fit under the panel. I couldn't touch the rudder pedals, which means I can't turn left and I can't turn right and I can't stop the airplane because that's where the brakes are. So my aviation career died at age 18. Next option, I didn't have a plan B, so I had to come up with one. I decided I wanted to be a real estate developer. And so there's several ways you can go about doing that. You can become a real estate broker, and a lot of brokers become developers, or you can become a general contractor and become a developer that way. Of the two, contracting seemed like the better choice because if I became a contractor, I could build my own projects as a developer, and I wouldn't be subject to having to go out to bid or possibly being taken to the cleaners by a builder. So I decided to go that route. Kim and I got married when I was 19. I got a job working for a company called Goodman Church Builders in San Jose. I walked onto the job site having zero experience at basically anything, and the superintendent asked me what I do, and my answer was, I'll do anything. Well, what he thought I said is, I can do anything, which is a little different. He handed me a set of drawings, said, here, kid, go start on the administration wing. Well, I'd never seen a set of blueprints in my life, but I was fortunate that Kim's dad, my new father-in-law, was a general contractor. So I made it through the day, took the drawings, went to Rick's house, said, Rick, what do I do? He thought that was the funniest thing in the world, that I'm now trying to build something, not knowing how to read blueprints. But he spent the night, in fact, every night for the next several months, showing me how to read blueprints and what to do. So every morning I would come back and I would meet with the superintendent who hired me, Ken, and I would say, Ken, here's what I want to do today. And I would just parrot back what Rick had taught me the night before. And Ken was really impressed because it appeared that I knew everything about this building. He was so impressed, in fact, that when I found a couple errors in the drawings where the structural sheets didn't quite align with the architectural, he was so impressed he put me in charge of the entire framing crew. So now at 19, I've got carpenters that are 35, 40 years old coming up to me saying, hey, boss, what do you want us to do? Well, that was interesting. It was a union job, so I had to join the carpenters union. Went down and signed up for apprenticeship school on Monday night, and they wouldn't let me in because I didn't have my high school diploma. So I had to drive home, get my high school diploma, come back, say, okay, here's my diploma. They said, all right, you're in. So I went into the classroom, sat down, and the instructor introduced himself and started handing out books. Well, the room was full. There was probably about 30 of us baby apprentices in there, and the fellow next to me raised his hand and said, well, what if you can't read? And the instructor didn't skip a beat. He said, oh, no problem. We've got the whole thing on cassette. How many people in here can't read? Well, half the hands went up. And I'm looking around thinking, I turned down the Air Force Academy, and I'm in here with a room full of guys who can't read. So I raised my hand and I said, excuse me, Mr. Instructor, but you made me drive all the way home, get my high school diploma, just so I could be in this room with a room full of guys who can't read my high school diploma, so what's up with that? Well, he sternly told me to shut up and sit down. Well, not being quite the spiritual saint that you see before you now, I basically told him he could take his book, his union, and his cassette tapes and shove them, let's just say, where the sun doesn't shine. He didn't like that. That basically got, and I don't honestly remember if I quit the union or if I was thrown out, but I found myself in the hallway immediately after my statement. So my career in the union ended after 15 minutes. So I went back to work the next day, talked to my boss, Ken, the superintendent. He asked how apprenticeship school was. I relayed the story to him. He thought that was the funniest thing he ever heard. He said, "Congratulations, kid, you're now management." I said, "Oh, okay, that sounds impressive. What's that mean?" He said, "Well," he says, "you show up half an hour early, get all the cords out, open up the gate, get everything ready for all the carpenters and all the tradesmen when they come." He said, "You'll work just like you have been, framing the building, doing what you're doing. And you stay half an hour late and you close everything up and you lock it up good and tight and secure the property before you go home." He said, "If the union agent shows up, called a BA or a business agent, if they happen to show up, which they did often," he said, "drop your tool belt, get in the trailer." He said, "You don't eat lunch with the carpenters. You don't eat the afternoon or morning snack with the carpenters." He says, "You're in the job trailer. If it rains, you come to work anyway. Carpenters don't work when it rains. But I do because I'm management." And so I spent a lot of time in the job trailer with Ken. And on that first project, he taught me how to schedule subcontractors, how to write contracts with mechanical contractors and electrical and drywall and the roofing guys. Taught me how to conduct inspections, whether it was the city building department or the fire department coming out. We learned how to do, or he taught me how to do draws with the bank, how to tour the church folks through the property, basically how to manage the entire project from start to finish. By the end of my first job, which was Central Christian Church in San Jose, California, you can Google that if you like, it's on Meridian between Foxworthy and Kirtner. By the end of my first job, I was the assistant project manager for Goodman Church Builders at 19 years old. The next job that came along, Goodman subcontracted the project to me. That's called Church of the Chimes. It's on Bryan Avenue in San Jose. Now, I wasn't old enough or experienced enough to be a general contractor that they could subcontract a project to, so I partnered with my father-in-law, Rick, a general contractor that taught me pretty much everything I know, and we did that project together. While that project was wrapping up, a carload of pastors came by and asked me if I would come meet with them. Goodman had given them a bid on their project of $1.3 million, but they only had $800,000. Between what they could borrow and what they could raise, $800,000 was it. So they were stuck. They asked me if I would go on staff at Calvary Chapel and build that facility for them. And I thought, well, yes, I will, because Goodman didn't have another job lined up in the Bay Area. But my question was, what happens when they run out of money? And the pastor, his name's Dan Greenlee, he looked at me and said, well, we'll just take an offering every week till we finish the project. And I thought, wow, long-term employment. So I got into the drawings and realized that I could take that building and reduce it by one seat from 1,000 seats just down to 999, one seat. And I could change that building from a Type 3 one-hour fire-rated building to a Type 4 non-rated building. I could redesign the structural system, and I saved $300,000 on that project. The next thing I did, I learned from my friend Steve Wozniak. When Steve was building the Apple computer, he couldn't afford all the parts that he needed. So he and Steve Jobs would do what's called, I think they invented the Apple computer, and they also invented dumpster diving, because they would go to Atari and Hewlett-Packard, and they would go diving through the dumpsters looking for spare parts to build the computer with, because they couldn't afford to buy them. Well, we couldn't afford some of the price tags that came in at Calvary, and so we did our version of dumpster diving. I took the structural engineer down to the local steel junkyard, and we went through a recycled steel pile and found all the beams and columns that we would need for the superstructure at Calvary. The structural engineer handpicked them. We had them trucked over to the church. I cleaned them up with a wire brush, painted them bright red with spray paint that I bought from Sears. And instead of paying $79,000 for the structural steel system, we got the entire thing up and in place for 20 grand. Other things we did at that project are probably too numerous to mention, but at the end of the day, we built a 999-seat auditorium, 2 floors. We had 700 on the main floor and then 299 in the balcony, big octagon building. We built that for $29 a square foot. No one in the Bay Area, all the experts, all the architects agreed it was impossible. No one could do that, yet we did. The way we did it was really simple. We did everything that was humanly possible on our part, and we asked God to fill in the rest, and he came through with flying colors. After that project, I had church after church after church after church all over wanting a 999-seat auditorium for $29 a square foot. Never did match that price, but we're consistently under budget. But that gives you a little bit of a background into my history, how I got started in church development, and how I became one of the top church developers in the United States. We have a lot of information on this website. You'll see a lot of ebooks that you can download. There's a book called Making Room to Make Disciples. Check all of that out. We'd love to help you. Remember what Solomon says. If you're going to do this, seek wisdom get knowledge. They'll serve you well. And that's what we're here for. We can help. Call me, 719-439-3019. I look forward to hearing from you.